of course, from NFL Matchup on ESPN, NFL Films senior producer, and Greg is nice enough to give us a few minutes live on the line as he does each and every year for the last 16 years leading up to the NFL Draft. Greg, how are you, my friends?
You know what, Adam? I just came in from my pro day, and it was the best pro day in the history of Western civilization, as of course they all are.
So, by the way, I love that that's how you started, because it's like a great personal Greg Cosell rant. You know, what goes through your mind when you hear all this conversation after you spend all this time studying all the film, and then there's such a reaction to a pro day?
Not much.
I love it.
Not much. Especially since, when I was in college, I played baseball, and we had to run a 40-yard dash, at the beginning of my freshman year before the baseball season started, and I ran a 4.840. So I guess of course, I didn't have to do it without my shirt on or anything, but I guess that would have been considered unbelievable.
That's amazing. My goodness. And this is why we say these pro days, it's a tool. And the coaches
It's a piece.
there.
It's a piece.
That's exactly what it is. But to me, it will always and forever be about what happens on Saturdays and how does it translate to Sundays. That's always the key, Greg, and we talk about it all the time. So first and foremost, let's start at the very top because, you've been doing this forever, and I really value your opinion. The listeners do as well. What does your scouting report say for Trevor Lawrence?
Well, let's start with this, and then we'll get into Trevor Lawrence and the others. First of all, no quarterback comes into the NFL a finished product. They all have pluses and minuses, strengths and weaknesses. So when you mention a weakness, it doesn't mean you don't like the player or you hate the player. It simply is for me, sitting in my office at NFL Films, watching tape. Here are strengths, here are weaknesses. How that gets played out in the NFL is a function of probably 20 different things. So I just wanted to say that to start. So Trevor Lawrence, to me, is clearly a high-level prospect. He's got size, he's got athleticism, he's got arm strength, he can throw with some touch and pace. He's pretty accurate. The ball placement is pretty precise. He improved in his ability to eliminate what's not there and see what is there from his 2019 to 2020 season. The one area that shows up on tape, and it will need to be addressed at some point, is he's a bit of a body thrower, Adam. So what happens is when he gets pressure inside, he starts to rush his mechanics. And then when he rushes his mechanics, he ends up becoming a little scattershot. So I think he does a nice job at times of climbing the pocket, but I think he needs to improve his pocket movement laterally, where he takes a step or two to the right or a step or two to the left. But obviously he's a big kid, throws the ball well. There's an awful lot to like, but he's going to get interior pressure in the NFL, and that's an area that needs, based on tape, to be improved.
Is he your number one quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, I don't really do that, but if I had to pick one, I'd say yes. I mean, I'm not the reason I don't make lists like that is because there's too many variables.
Yep.
But yes, I think he would be the number one if I had to pick one.
How about your scouting report on Zach Wilson? And I'm curious, how far back did you go in terms of studying the film?
Well, it's interesting you say that, and I ended up not seeing 2019 because it was like Joe Burrow. He wasn't really thought of as a big-time prospect after his 2019 season. So I studied him in great detail in 2020. And there's a lot to like about Zach Wilson. I think he has a live arm. He doesn't have a gun, like it's not a Matthew Stafford gun, but he has a live arm. And I would make the distinction between a live arm and a power arm. There's a difference. But I thought his tape showed the look of an efficient ball distributor with a very good feel for the timing of the pass game. Obviously, his pass game, that's all we have. I think he has very good mobility and second reaction ability, which many now believe is essential to play in the league. So I think there's a lot to like. Now, he did not play many games, only one, in fact, in the kind of environment he'll face in the NFL. And that game was Coastal Carolina, where he got consistent pressure and did not handle himself particularly well. Now, that's not all on him, but he did not handle himself particularly well. So to me, one of the interesting questions with Wilson is his tendency to play a little loose and undisciplined at times. Much like Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech, and we know about Mahomes obviously now, although Wilson does not have the same level of arm talent as Mahomes. So I'm curious to see how that will impact his transition to the NFL, because that's a projection. Is he going to be in a system that demands that he play more structured? Keep one thing in mind. You should not be throwing with different arm angles unless the defense demands that you throw with different arm angles. Otherwise, you should be throwing the same way all the time.
I think that's an excellent point, Greg. And I'm listening to some of these words, and I'm thinking to myself, and even as you reference the system, you know, that Shanahan system that LaFleur's going to run in New York, I mean.
See, that would be great for Kyle Wilson.
It'd be amazing, right?
Zach Wilson, excuse me, yeah.
That's a great, like, you want to talk about a fit and a system and a player and a style and a scheme. I mean, if I'm the Jets and Zach Wilson, that feels like a perfect mix and a marriage here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, in fact, here's what I typed, because you know my notes. I take really copious notes when I watch these guys. I said his overall skill set would transition well in a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of system with his second reaction movement ability, adding another dimension to a well-schemed and well-structured passing game. So to me, he would fit well. Now, a lot of people would say a lot of quarterbacks fit well in those systems because they're so good. But I think for Zach Wilson, that would be really, really good.
That would be excellent, and that makes a ton of sense. Well, you know, it just so happens that Kyle Shanahan, not a Kyle Shanahan type of system, but the Kyle Shanahan picks third overall. And, you know, there's been a lot of conversation about Mac Jones. And obviously, you look at Mac Jones, and he's had a lot of talent and great coaching around him in Alabama. You know, some have made the comparison, Mac Jones and Matt Ryan, and what Kyle was able to do with Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Yep. What do you see in terms of comparisons, scouting report, and style here for Mac Jones?
Well, Jones is a highly efficient executor and ball distributor. He's not a movement guy. He's not a very good athlete. He's certainly not a higher-level athlete. There's no twitch to him at all. But he did show some pocket movement at Alabama where he could, you know, step to the right or left, but he's not going to make off-script, outside-of-structure plays. That's not his game. So now it gets down to how you feel as a coach. If you feel that the ability to make second reaction, improvisational movement plays is essential, then Mac Jones isn't your guy. If you don't feel that's essential and you feel your system takes care of just about everything, and as he grows, his ability to win before the snap of the ball, see, that's where I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady, but stylistically, that's what you're hoping. You're hoping that Jones becomes the kind of quarterback that is so efficient running your offense, and as he grows and develops, that he becomes so good before the ball is snapped that he's not going to be surprised by pressures or those kinds of things that would force him to break down. So that's what you're hoping. So it all depends on your view of the balance between structured system play, which I think he's very good at, and second reaction movement, which he's not very good at.
No, this is a great breakdown. And now, Greg, I'll ask you the follow-up here with the Shanahan offense and Shanahan system, and literally with Kyle here. It's not one of his old assistants. Do you like that fit studying the film for Mac Jones?
I think that's an easy answer to say yes, because Kyle certainly is a very strong believer, as you know, has tremendous conviction in his system. You can go back to what Nick Mullins did a few years ago, and he put up numbers. Obviously, Kyle believes, he works at it so hard. He's not the only coach, obviously, who does that, but he works at it so hard that he believes his system presents the reads and the throws and the opportunities for the quarterback to be highly successful, snap after snap, quarter after quarter, week after week. So that would seem like a good fit, but then I would also turn my attention to Trey Lance, because Trey Lance in college was under center an awful lot, ran a ton of play action, conventional play action. By that I mean under center, where he turned his back to the defense, ran an offense in which there were 2 back sets, and amazingly enough, the fullback wore number 44, just like Kyle Juszczyk. So, Trey Lance is very well schooled with extensive experience playing under center with multiple play-action pass game concepts, turning his back to the defense, including boot action. So he's another quarterback that, if you're just talking theoretically, would absolutely fit a Kyle Shanahan system.
I see. I love that. And I think Trey Lance is going to be a player at the NFL level. And again, that's from people I talk to, because I didn't watch North Dakota State. They didn't play this year. But your breakdown right there, Greg, was absolutely superb. In general, when you studied the film on
Some people
Lance,
love
and going,
it,
I'm sure, a lot back to the 2019 season.
I did. I watched about 8 games.
So what'd you see out of Trey Lance?
I like Trey Lance.
Yeah, me too.
I think that he's a twitchy kid overall. He's got a strong live arm. He's got really good athleticism. So obviously he can make second reaction plays. He gives you the run game dimension. And as I said, he's got the play action experience. He throws a really good deep ball with trajectory and precise ball placement. He's in an offense that does demand progression reading, so within the context of his North Dakota State offense, he did that. He did not make a ton of throws in the middle of the field, so that's something that a lot of young quarterbacks, when they come into the league, they have to work through that because they feel like there's 15 defenders on the field because, the hash marks are closer in the NFL, and the game is played more in the middle of the field than on the perimeter as it is in college. So they have to get used to the fact that it just looks like the bodies are much closer together in the NFL because they are. So he'll have to get used to that. But he may be more refined in advance than any quarterback in this draft class when it comes to that conventional play-action pass game.
Wow, that's noteworthy, and it's really noteworthy with that 3rd overall pick. I don't think there's any question about it. What did you see when you did a deep dive on Justin Fields?
Yeah, Justin Fields is a really interesting prospect because he's really, really talented. In fact, you could almost argue that he's just maybe a smaller Cam Newton type, because his body is so strong. Obviously he's got a really good arm. He's got movement to his game. He's capable of really, really good throws. I think that he's a high-level traits prospect, both as a thrower and an athlete, but I think there's some things that need work. And again, I'm speaking about film study, Adam, as you know. I don't know Justin Fields. I'm not going to sit down and interview him. I think the tape shows you that there are times he was a little lacking in his recognition. He was a little deliberate. I think there is a question as to his overall field vision. Now, maybe that's a function of the offense and what he was asked to do. I think that that's the kind of thing you'd have to sit down with him and go over and get a feel for how he responds to that. But I think he clearly fits the profile of today's NFL quarterback with his designed run game ability, his second reaction ability, his playmaking ability, and his arm. So there is an awful lot to like, but I think that you have to get a sense of why he was deliberate at times and why the film shows that there were times he just did not see things the way I think he should have seen things. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take from watching the film.
No, that makes sense, and we've heard that with regards to Justin Fields. And coming from you, Greg, that certainly speaks volumes. Now, specifically as it relates to number 3 in the draft, which is obviously today a big topic on the show, and Mac Jones. Yeah, Mac Jones has obviously been brought up a lot, and you referenced Trey Lance. You segued yourself into that, which I loved. I don't necessarily see Fields as a fit. I could see Mac. I could see Trey Lance. What would your read be on Fields as a fit for San Francisco?
I mean, theoretically, just based on pure talent, Fields could be a fit anywhere. But I think my sense would be, and I know Mac Jones has, and again, this is pure speculation. This is the fun part of it, Adam, as you know. It's pure speculation, but the more I actually rewatched Trey Lance this morning because I was watching their left tackle. So I was watching Lance again as well. And boy, did I just keep thinking that Trey Lance would be such a good fit for Kyle Shanahan. And maybe that's a contrarian opinion. I don't know. But just the play-action element, the play-action boot element, the fact that he played with a fullback and he's very used to a lot of those concepts. They're not new to him. I just kept thinking, God, Trey Lance seems to me to be such a good fit.
Wow. Listen, coming from you, that speaks volumes, Greg, without question. What do you think overall of this receiver class? I've heard from a couple of execs that this is a super talented wide receiver class that's going to have some great depth, not only in round one, but 2 and 3. You're digging this receiver class?
Oh, yeah. I probably watched tape on 40 receivers because so many get drafted every year.
Wow.
And I would agree with that. And there's 2 receivers that I really, really like who my guess is will be first-round players. I'm not good at that. I don't do mocks, as you know, Adam. But I really like Rashad Bateman, and I really like Terrace Marshall. They're bigger receivers. See, it's very hard to compare receivers. Like you cannot compare Jalen Waddle and Rashad Bateman. They're totally different players. So, it depends on what a team is looking for and how they structure their offense. And then it comes down to volume targets in the NFL. Michael Thomas has put up huge numbers. He's a high-volume target in Sean Payton's offense. I think Rashad Bateman has some elements of Michael Thomas when Michael Thomas came out of Ohio State. No one thought Michael Thomas was going to catch 140 balls when he came out of Ohio State, but he did. I think Bateman is very much like Thomas coming out of Ohio State. He kind of made me think of Allen Robinson coming out of Penn State. So Bateman's a receiver I really, really like.
How special is Kyle Pitts when you study the film?
See, again, to me, if you I think just as a player, I would argue he's the best prospect, and that's the word I'll use, prospect in the entire draft class.
Your laugh was great, Greg. I mean, it sounded like you were kind of foaming at the mouth. Go ahead. I can't get enough of this.
Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts, I think it doesn't matter what 2 letters you put before or after his name. He's a receiving weapon.
Yeah.
I could see teams seeing him as a big X and not even as a quote-unquote tight end. Keep in mind, he ran a 4.46. Now, whatever that means, it's just a number, but when you think of the fact that DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.58, Michael Thomas ran a 4.57, I mean, here's a kid at 6'6", 246 who ran a 4.46. Just the way he moves. I just think in today's NFL, with the increase in formations and motion and getting free releases for receivers into their routes, I just think Kyle Pitts is the true weapon in this class. And I would almost put Jalen Waddle as the guy right behind him in that regard.
Oh, so Waddle, in your opinion, would be the second best weapon. Elaborate on that.
Well, I think Waddle is very much like a Tyreek Hill kind of prospect, in that Waddle, you can line him up anywhere in your formation. He's a jet sweep guy. He's an orbit reverse guy. You get him free access. He is so explosive both vertically and with the ball in his hands. And I think the NFL has moved in that direction, Adam. I think Jalen Waddle fits exactly where the NFL game is going.
How about Chase and Smith and your evaluation on those cats?
Well, I really like Chase. Chase, to me, is just a physical, type A personality receiver. When I watch guys, I don't sit around after I finish watching them and go, who do they remind me of? But sometimes guys just pop into my head. I thought of a Steve Smith when I was watching Chase. I thought of a DeAndre Hopkins. He's just a dog, and he's so good, in my view, in so many ways. I really like Jamar Chase. Devonta Smith is interesting because no matter what you want to say about him, he's a little bit of an outlier. There's not a lot of 6 feet, 170-pound receivers in the NFL, and there have not been many of those guys drafted over the years. So Smith, to me, he's a long, thin, silky smooth, linear strider. He's got a lot of really, really good traits. I would view him as more of a movement Z, a guy you want off the ball. You want to get him movement so he can get free access off the ball. I watched 8 Alabama games from last year, 2019, and 8 Alabama games from this year. And there were a few snaps, not many, but a few, where he lined up as the boundary X, which means he's on the ball, and he got pushed out of bounds. He's 170 pounds, but he's got really good traits overall, and his movement is so smooth and fluid. But I would view him as a movement Z type receiver.
Greg, final question for you. What running backs do you like in this upcoming draft?
Well, I think there's two ways these days to analyze running backs. Backs that give you the pass game element, and then backs that are just really good runners. See, I think if you're just looking at a really good runner, I love the kid from North Carolina, Javonte Williams. I think his contact balance and finishing traits is as good as I've seen in recent years. But he's not a receiver at this point in his career. So I think if you're looking for backs that are pass game guys, you're looking at ATN, you're looking at Harris, who's a fascinating guy because normally 6'2", 230-pound backs are not seen as third down backs. But I think he will be seen that way. And then the other guy I would put in that category is Kenneth Gainwell, who did not play this year, but he from Memphis. But in 2019, he ran wide receiver routes. He ran Alvin Kamara routes, and he's a really, really good receiver.
Craig, you're the best. This was incredible stuff. I mean, I know how much I love it. The listeners love it. We appreciate the breakdown. You are the absolute best in the business, my friend. And we will keep reading, keep watching. We appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Adam, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, my friend.
The great Greg Cosell.